So, to start off this video, I would like to read you the very first note I wrote down while watching this show. I'm very tired from work and thought, why the hell not fuck you all. Trickster, or its full title, Trickster from Edogao Rampo's Boy Detectives Club, is... My god, it's certainly a show! Backstory time. This show is loosely based on a series of novels written by author Edogao Ranpo. See, that's from the title. I have yet to actually read any of Ranpo's original works, but I would like to someday. Though, when I watched this for the first time, I didn't know who he was. It was one Christmas break in high school, and Funimation posted a clip from this show. I don't know why I clicked on it, but I did, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Also, one of the main characters is voiced by Justin Briner, Deku's English VA, and I had just gotten into Hiroaka at the time, so I started watching the show, and man, even when I was 16, I knew it was bad, but I also weirdly loved it, and that's why we're here today, because I am the only person in the world still thinking about this series. I do have to give a trigger warning, however. There will be discussions of suicide, as the whole driving point of the show is an immortal who wants to die. So I'll sort of be touching on that, but not completely. To be honest, the show doesn't really handle its sensitive topics very well, but kind of in a way that it's like, are you actually trying to bring it up? So, if you need to exit the video at any time, please do so. Take care of yourselves, or else I'll be coming for you. Oh god, how do I even begin explaining the plot? So, there's this famous detective named Akachi, who runs the Akachi Detective Agency. Alongside that is the Boy Detectives Club, a group of talented teens who work under Akachi and basically do all the work themselves. I really hope they get paid for the shit they have to do. One day, one of the boys, Hanasaki, meets a mysterious homeless boy who is unable to die, despite that being all he wants to do. Intrigued, Hanasaki recruits this kid, Kobayashi, to the Boys Detectives Club with the promise that one day he will kill him. But Hanasaki's real goal is wanting to make him want to live. More and more, it seems like the cases that the group solves have a connection to a criminal named the Fiend with 20 faces, who seems to have history with Akachi. With help from a police investigator, now Nakamura, they try to put the pieces together and oh god, this is a cop show!
I've never seen a cop threaten a child before.
I'll be honest, that's the best description of the plot I can give without just telling you every detail about what goes on in the show. Even now, only like a week after rewatching the show, I kind of struggle to tell you what it's about. It just feels like a series of increasingly insane events connected by just the barest minimum thread of logic. The first 7-ish episodes are fun, episodic mysteries and character building, but even those kind of suck. This is a mystery detective show, but it doesn't actually do that good of a job at creating a mystery. The clues we're given are so nonsensical that they don't make sense, or are so obvious that it kind of ruins the whole mystery when you can immediately guess it halfway through. And not in a, ooh, I figured out the mystery myself and now I can watch how it unfolds, but more of a, wow, I saw that coming from a mile away and it was dumb. And by detective show, I mean a spy show. I mean, not exactly, but with how much the characters use high-tech spy gear like wrist-mounted grappling hooks, rocket boots, invisibility umbrellas, and personal airbag safety vests, it really does feel like they wanted to go the more spy route. That's not really a complaint with the show, just an observation. Nothing is explained in this show either. Not even the most bare minimum of lore is given for all of this ultra high-tech modern Japan with pendant-sized holophones and giant military robots. Hell, even Vivid Red threw in a single line explaining how all this shit is possible. Also, you know that core concept of the series, the one where an immortal is searching for a way to die? That extremely interesting gimmick in which a story could craft thousands of thought-provoking scenarios around? Yeah, that's barely touched upon. The show throws a couple ideas at us that would be super cool if we actually got to see any of them for more than a single scene. And if you wanted a nuanced and insightful look into the mind of a teen boy craving death as he learns what being loved and what loving others is like, you are SOL, baby. Because not once in this whole show does anyone ask this kid,
Hey, so, personal question, but why do you want to die?
What?
I mean, I know it's rarely ever a singular problem, but do you need to, talk to someone or something?
No. You haven't unlocked my tragic backstory yet.
So, Kensuke Hanasaki starts out as a hyperactive, adrenaline-seeking kid who wants to prove himself as a true detective. He just kind of seems like a good kid, honestly. Wants to help people, has a tragic backstory where he was an orphan with his adopted older brother and they were both adopted by a rich dude, but the older brother was going to be the family successor, so the older brother ran away so that Kensuke could continue living easily, which led Kensuke to asking Akachi for help finding his brother, and that's how he got into the Boy Detectives Club. Anyway, he meets this other kid, Yoshio Kobayashi, and is like, haha, you're funny, wanna hang out? Meanwhile, Kobayashi is trying to kill himself, but he has this force field thingy that keeps that from happening. And they do the anime thing of, I'll promise I'll kill you one day. You better keep your promise. So these are our two main boys, and also the only reason I ever finished this show in the first place. And the second place. The show is only ever really fun to watch when these two are on screen. Hanasaki is friendly towards Kobayashi, even though the best response he typically gets is a t. I really like the dynamic these two have, the way they adapt to one another, and how Kobayashi especially begins to really like being around this loud, annoying kid. These two are fun together, and it makes me want to see them go on a bunch of adventures. But because this is Trickster, this really neat concept and character dynamic we're introduced to, exploring the extent and limitations of Koba's power and the growing relationship these two have with each other, nah, they're separated for most of the show because of stupid petty arguments conceived purely so that the plot can happen. Not to mention, but for a show that is ostensibly about suicide and death, it has very little to actually say about those topics, which is probably for the better in the long run, considering how bunk the writing is in this show, but still, I'll be completely honest, these are the only two characters I actually have ever cared about. This was the first of the mediocre anime where I only care about the main characters who are absolutely gay for each other, and one of them is voiced by Justin Briner in English. Try to guess anime number 2! And yeah, Hanasaki is the one with Deku's voice. But the other night, I forced a friend to watch the first episode. And since it was over Discord, I wanted to make sure that nothing was lost through audio, so we watched the sub version. And I was like, wow, Kobayashi sounds familiar. And it was Daiki Yamashita. So both halves of my boys are voiced by Izuku Midoriya in one language or another. That's hilarious. Akachi Kogoro is one of the most insufferable douchebags to ever grace my field of vision. He's introduced as the boss, an old, washed-up man whose heart has been hardened by the horrors he's seen. But underneath his self-destructive habits and his slimy behavior is a person who just wants to do good in the world. That's why he takes these kids under his wing, and why he separates himself from them during the latter half of the series. Except, I hate this guy. If he had grown and matured over the course of the series, slowly showing his affection for the detective club and realizing the positive impact he's had on their lives and they've had on his, that would be one thing. But no, he just kind of sits around, sexually harasses the policewoman he works with. Don't worry, we'll get to her. And when Hanasaki is like, hey, my long-lost brother appeared on TV saying he and his small housing complex are seceding from Japan, we gotta do something, he basically tells the kid to fuck off and says he isn't allowed to leave the office. Just The fluctuation between asshole who secretly cares and just being an asshole is basically a metronome set to the highest tempo. Man gets a whole flashback episode, and I could not care less. He had an abusive father who he left and was raised by a detective man who was shot by a bad guy, and then he took that detective's name to honor his legacy, and then he was like a military man or something. He eventually says he was a mercenary, but like, for what? What conflict is this? Who are they fighting? I don't think I want to know the answer. But this leads us into the Fiend with 20 Faces. I'll just be calling him Faces from now on, but like, while out murdering people for money, Akachi meets Faces and they become like war buddies. Faces eventually realizes that Akachi just wants a thrill and promises to never let him be bored again. How does he do this? First, by letting Akachi leave the battlefield with this reporter woman who he fell in love with, but not before kissing her and brainwashing her. Oh, did I forget to mention that? Faces can brainwash people when he kisses them, which is essentially a way for the plot to do whatever the fuck the writers want. Anyway, Akachi's domestic AU gets fucked up and his girlfriend is killed and he's depressed, blah blah blah. Faces basically becomes Akachi's own personal supervillain, like Batman and Joker, but stupid. By the way, for a character named The Fiend with 20 Faces, he doesn't actually use disguises all that often. I can only remember 2 times where he explicitly pretends to be somebody else. Most of the time, he just has literal, like, stage masks that are trying to be artsy, but it also feels incredibly pointless. Also, the show makes a point to have Faces see Kobayashi's power, and has him talk to Koba briefly about how they both have gifts. And you would think this criminal who specializes in manipulating others would want to use Koba in some fashion to, like, get at the heart of his totally not boyfriend, right? Wrong. Get fucked. There's also this police lady named Now Nakamura who gives cases to the Akachi agency, and then she takes the credit for when they're solved. She also has this sidekick named Miyanishi. Anyway, she starts dating this guy who we don't ever see, and whoops, it was actually Faces. Too bad the show never gives the audience enough clues to figure it out and create some kind of tension, just waiting for something bad to happen. No, the audience figures it out because if it wasn't Faces, this would be the world's most pointless side plot, and there are a lot of those here. Anyway, she Maze Hughes, her sidekick. Come on, oh, the lighting's perfect. He's gonna get it. It's gonna happen.
You're okay.
Yeah. I knew it! Oh, I hate this! And now she's being held under protective arrest or something. Akachi breaks in to talk to her after she's had a shower, so she's in a bathrobe. And it's revealed here the man she was dating was 20 Faces, and she starts taunting and being all, ooh, you want to know if I've kissed him, which would brainwash me. And then this exchange happens?
When did it happen?
How long has it been since he brainwashed me, you mean? That's the kicker.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't. Which is the dumbest goddamn thing I've ever seen in fiction, because then she spends the rest of the conversation basically being a mouthpiece for Faces, and then Akachi is taken, and then we literally never hear of her again. Even in the epilogue after Faces and Akachi have presumably gone missing to fuck in peace, and Kobayashi finally has shoes, Nakamura is just not given an ending. She was brainwashed, probably, maybe, but also maybe not, killed a man and was arrested, and then nothing else. That's the end of her story. Also, what are the points of these shots? What do they add? And I know, Jamie Marchi, I know she can be a good actor. I have heard her do it before, but wow, this script did not give you much of a chance, huh? Speaking of which, I very quickly realized this show does not like women. In the main cast, there are only 2, Nakamura, who I just explained, and Noro. Noro is kind of interesting, actually, in that she basically never goes outside, but is also completely socially adjusted and healthy. She gets upset when people call her a homebody or a shut-in because of the stereotypes associated with those words.
Why do regular Joes like you always think shut-ins like me have to be sad sacks? I exercise 3 hours a day and I can order any essentials online.
Is that living?
Everything I've ever needed or loved is right here in my home. And that's all there is to it.
So yeah, she's really cool, actually. But she's also dressed in PJs that consist of poofy white shorts and a sort of tank top that shows her belly, with a pastel pink shawl with fluffy strings and matching thigh-high socks. There's nothing wrong with this design in theory, but with everything else in the show, it makes me feel like there was a specific reason for her to be the sole female member of the club. Every other woman in this show is essentially a nameless side character who more often than not gets treated terribly. This woman from episode 2 hires the agency, and there are these really weird close-ups of her legs moving and her adjusting her bra. Turns out to be the villain in the end in a very stupid way. There's this girl at school who has a crush on Inoue, and that's her only character trait. She doesn't even confess to him in the end, and she's still so proud of herself, like, girl, you really shouldn't be. Then there's the lady who Akachi fell in love with and was manipulated and killed off for his tragic backstory. The girl in the first episode who is being kidnapped so that Hanasaki could stop it and be introduced to the audience. The girl in the last episode about to kill herself when my boys show up in order to feign some kind of satisfactory ending. There's a nice elderly lady, an evil elderly lady, and at this point I am straining my brain to think of any other women in this show. Also, there's Inoue, Akachi's right-hand man, and he's actually kind of cool. Mainly because, like, dude is in a wheelchair, but he isn't paralyzed completely, and he is able to walk or stand for a short time. When able-bodied people see somebody in a wheelchair, we assume that they can't walk at all, so this little detail is neat. But also in the first episode, he has a robot foot that got cut off, but in his flashbacks, we see how he hurt his legs was some shipping containers fell on him, but there was no mention of needing to amputate anything. And so I think he has some spinal injury. You know, the more I think about it, the more I have no idea why Inoue is injured in this specific way, but yeah, it's still cool. Also, he's voiced by J. Michael Tatum, because who else would voice this specific character design? All that aside, he's pretty fucking mean to Kobayashi for no reason. Quite frankly, everyone is kind of mean and petty in this show, and it's so weird. Mainly, it's people fussing at Kobayashi, calling him a brat, and generally yelling at him for being a socially inept, unempathetic teen, which, you know, he is kind of an asshole, but also, I wonder what could be the reason this homeless, suicidal child is not well adjusted when interacting with others. It's a mystery. So, I don't normally dedicate a whole section to the animation of a show. I normally give it a passing mention when discussing the plot or whatever, but holy shit, this is the worst show I have ever seen in terms of animation. It's so bad. Like, honest to God, this is horrendous. For starters, it uses wide shots with simplified characters way too often. That's something that every anime, every piece of animation does. There's no need for extreme detail in shots like these, but this show uses them a lot, and half the time you can barely find the characters talking on the screen. Like, look at them, they're standing in the corners! In conversations, the characters are either standing around only doing the slightest physical movements, or the character speaking isn't on screen. Congrats to this show for having the least appealing anime food ever. What is this even? The first OP looks like it was put together by looking up a list of top 10 anime opening tropes, and then using that as a guide. There's barely any movement, barely anything of substance, nothing means anything except for this stupidly obvious foreshadowing, like, wow, real subtle there. Also, out of the approximately 28 different shots in this animated segment, 19 of them have a pure black background. These animators were not paid enough to give a shit. The second opening is better, but still generally bland, except for this shot. This one is really cool, I like it. 3D animation is also used a lot, and it's so noticeable and so bad. Mainly used for the various robots in the show, and these goldfish in the office that get focused on when the budget for actual character animation runs out. Good God, this looks bad. Also, how do they feed these fish? I have been trying to find out for the life of me why this show specifically looks so awful. There are 2 studios behind it, as it was a co-production between TMS Entertainment and Shin-A Animation. Both of these studios have generally good track records. Shin-A is a bit more stylized, with its Wikipedia page being just so full of Doraemon, but you know, that's not bad. But studios mean nothing when compared to the actual individuals making a piece of art. Alright, then let's go to the director, a man named Masahiro Mukai. His track record is small, but I'm sorry, he worked on Madoka Magica, Space Dandy, Zankyo no Terror, and Blood Blockade Battlefront. Then he did Trickster, and went on to do Mob Psycho and My Hero Academia. Alright, so it's clearly not the director. What about the chief animation director? Shinya Yamada. Nope, that track record's pretty good. This show has the most producers out of the shows that I've looked at, so maybe money was poorly managed. I don't know, and I super don't know because I can't find any articles about this show or its production because nobody cares about this mediocre queer-baiting action drama from 2016 except for me! I don't think I can naturally integrate this section into anywhere else, so it's going here. These are scenes that I need to talk about. They make me feel something. Oh, God. Alright, so here's the setup. The group has to escort this murder psychiatrist because he's gonna testify something, some kind of trial, or there was a plea bargain. I don't know. They gotta protect him for dumb bureaucratic reasons, and there's a whole group trying to kill him because they feel like justice isn't being served. Fair enough, but they plan like a whole-ass operation. Hanasaki isn't there because he's still pouting for no reason, but he shows up later because he meets this kid named Hide who's like, hey, new best friend whom I literally just met, let's go do some vigilante justice. Literally dragging him along while wearing bulletproof vests, good lord. But also Kobayashi was calling him the entire time because he's like, why isn't he here? Because Kobayashi secretly cares now. The Hanasaki eventually decides to join his friends, and Hide is like, alright, later man, and this whole subplot is pointless, but anyway. The group get Horrible Murder Man to the checkpoint, and they start heading down the building, which, by the way, this is the building where Hanasaki and Kobayashi first met. This is where Hanasaki meets up with the group, and there's a nice moment, but oh no, the mother of the murdered girl shows up and shoots a gun, but then Kobayashi jumps in the way of the bullet, and he'll be fine because of his force field. No, he gets shot! The force field is still active, meaning that none of them can touch him, but it's much weaker. Akachi speculates that his power is proportional to how much he wants to die, meaning in the moment he jumped to save Hanasaki, he wanted to live, and that's why his powers didn't work. So the options are either let him die or make him want to die. Everything is awful. They carry him back to the office on this conveniently ripped off curtain Koba pulled down, and the kids are scrambling because Akachi was like, by the way, the club's disbanded. Bye! So it's just a kid in a tracksuit, a kid in a wheelchair, a bird in the place of a kid, and a kid who's dying and can't be cared for by any conventional means. This is terrible. Then Hide shows up like, hey Han, what's up? You wanna hang? Crazy mission, huh? And Inoue is like, you left us for this guy? Wait, I didn't. Excuses. Which is really frustrating because Hanasaki literally didn't want any part of the plan. He was literally dragged along. Upset at being wrongfully accused, Hanasaki is like, okay, screw this, I'm out, and leaves with Hide, and Kobayashi watches as he leaves and a tear falls from his eye and his power activates and the bullet is pulled out of him, and it's like, oh, what did we just learn? How strong his power is proportional to how much he wants to die, and also, when they're in the building, the reason Kobayashi and Hanasaki first met was because Hanasaki was trying to find a lost dog, and the lost dog, tried to attack Koba, but of course the force field, so the dog died instead, and all we see is like a blood stain. And then later that episode, we see Koba is sitting there, he's sitting there putting flowers on where the dog died because he actually does care, man. And then when we're coming back to this building, we see it shows the blood stain again, and it shows the withered flowers, but it also shows brand new flowers, meaning Kobayashi has been coming back to this spot where the dog he killed but didn't mean to kill died, and has been putting flowers, and like, that's just a really, like, that's good, that's good writing, that's good care, come on, man! And the ending. So like, okay. Faces kidnapped Akachi, and Hanasaki pulls the stupid move to get up there. Meanwhile, Koba is like, bro, what the fuck? And also his powers are fading, as evidenced by bloody footprints. So he gets up to the airship and confrontations happen. The airship is falling apart. Faces grabs Koba and threatens to kill him. And it's like, oh shit, his power super isn't working now. And then Akachi crashes an escape pod into the ship, and the first OP starts playing. My boys are falling out of the airship, and Hanasaki is shouting for Koba, and they finally grab each other's hands, and it's like, I'm sorry I couldn't kill you, but now we can die together. And Koba is happy and thanks Hanasaki, and then his powers activate again, and they land safely in the ocean. Even the stupid gay old men, who I couldn't care less about, managed to get to me. They're on the airship, and Akachi lights a cigarette and tells Faces thanks for all the games over the years. Weird thing to say to a person who mentally tormented a fuck ton of people, but okay. And when Faces is like unsure and stuff, Akachi says,
Come on. You can make a better face than that, can't you? You got 20 of them.
and like, that's good banter. That feels like something that would come from two old rivals who really just want to explore each other's bodies. And at the end, Koba finally gets some dang shoes! My boy has been barefoot this entire time, and I think he has some control over his power now. Like, a cherry blossom petal gets sliced, and so it's still there, but he doesn't want to die anymore, I think. I don't know, but my boys are together, and why am I crying?
Before going to the conclusion, I want to address one more thing. You may have been wondering why I've sort of been pushing the queerness of this series throughout the video, and to understand why, we need to go over the history of Edogao Rampo's works. In 1923, he released his first published story, and quickly became a household name. While there had been other Japanese mystery authors before him, Rampo's works managed to stand out from the crowd due to the focus on the actual process of solving mysteries. In the 1930s, however, a new element was added that boosted his popularity. His stories now involved Ero Guru nan sensu, as well as adding what was back then considered abnormal sexuality. It was also during this time that he had a friendly bet with anthropologist Junichi Iwata to, quote, see who could find the most books about erotic desire between men, as Iwata's field of study was homosexuality in Japan. Sadly, Iwata died with only half of his works published, so Rampo saw to it that the remaining stories could be published as well. In Japan, Rampo is seen as a bit of a queer icon. While I'm not one to assign concrete labels onto historical figures who very likely identified in ways that we may see as problematic today, I believe it's fairly safe to say that Rampo was, at the very least, not straight. Which puts into context all the homoerotic tension between Akachi and Faces, as well as the parallels between those two and my boys. Side tangent, but I've recently been thinking a lot about Case Study of Vanitas, specifically this one comment by anime reviewer YouTube man back when the show first came out, and it has bothered me so much ever since, in that he called the show Tumblr bait, essentially saying it's yaoi baiting, and that bothered me because wow, way to dumb down all the complex character writing and intricate world building to, that's pretty gay, not for me. That's a video for another time though. I bring this up because that label, I feel, applies to Trickster, because it's clearly queer in some capacity, but it never commits. It especially feels like it's leaning into the Bishonen aesthetic with the way the characters are drawn sometimes. I need to find a way to articulate things like this better, but for now I'll say that it's trying to have the style without the substance, and also does the style bad because the animation is still really bad.
When I started actually doing this anime reviewish type thing, I knew I wanted to come back to this show because no one ever talks about it. And the reason no one talks about it is because it sucks. Oh my god, it sucks so badly. It's trying so hard to be artsy and smart, but fails at every single conceivable level. So why do I even give it a second thought? Originally, it was because I found a weird enjoyment in this show. The concept of the two main characters is awesome as hell, and the show is so good at teasing you for just a bit longer. It would give me hope that maybe one of the interesting ideas that get brought up will actually be expanded upon. It never is, and by the time I'm at my limit, the show is over. And, you know, I still find weird enjoyment in the show, but it's different than before. Because now, I'm losing my mind over the absolute asshole leaps in logic and laughing every 5 seconds because either the animation is terrible or one of the dub actors just dropped an unintentionally hilarious line.
And if I can, I'll kill you too. If I had to pick a word, I guess I'd say pure?
I'm never asking your opinion again.
Sorry. I got so pissed off that I forgot to hold back.
Does human life mean nothing to you?
Not really.
Damn it, I still can't kill myself.
So, still trying to kill yourself? You used some weird power again to brainwash them, right?
You want to fight off any intruders, no
What are you
matter
guys
who they
talking
may
about?
be.
This is stupid. Please, just kill me. I want to die so badly. That's my line. Don't start copying me.
Who told you about that?
I'm simply one hell of a psychiatrist. You're excited about this, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes.
Huh?
You're thrilled. Don't lie. Ooh. My, this kid is one special snowflake, huh? It's not unusual for a psychologically unstable child to develop special abilities over time, but...
Though, as much as I love these characters, these two, specifically and exclusively, I don't care about literally anyone else. This show does not give me a reason to care about anyone else. There is so much here that could have been interesting, but it just throws too many elements into the pot and can't decide what it wants to focus on. Half the time, the things it does focus on are the least interesting aspects. I straight up didn't remember most of this show. Even the parts that I vaguely remembered weren't as exciting to me as the first time around. Do I recommend this show? Yes, but under a few conditions though. This is something you watch with a friend and make commentary throughout. Point out the stupidity of the plot, and just laugh at everything going on. That's what I think would be the best viewing experience. I remember showing this series to a friend at a sleepover the same year I found it, and then Kobayashi dropped this line.
Maybe a useless son, but now that his father is ill, if anything were to happen to him, I don't know what I'd do.
Then, just kill yourself.
And I will always remember my friend slamming down on the space bar and turning to me with the most aghast expression on her face, which, you know, that's a fair reaction to that line. I refuse to be the only person who remembers that this show exists, and now I'm giving all of you that knowledge. Go forth, my friends. I feel like no matter what I say, it's... Oh my god, what the fuck? Why do I care? God... Oh my god, damn it. Fuck.